Hey guys, my name is Joanna, also known as Just Another Flutist here on YouTube, and today we're going to be talking about what you should realistically expect from your students as a private music lesson teacher. Over the past few months, I have noticed my students kind of repeating the same thing to me. I very often get presented with like a 5 to 10 minute explanation from them at the beginning of our lessons, with them telling me how bad they are. This has happened enough times for me to make a video about. After that 5 to 10 minutes of them telling me how bad they are, okay, given that you're not playing at your 100% right now, that's okay. I understand that now. So let's just kind of hear you play a bit. The really weird thing is that when they do start playing, it sounds a lot better than the last time I heard them play. I would say 95% of the time when this happens, they really do sound better than before. But for some reason, they think that they sound like crap. So of course that made me think, what's going on? They were way better than the last lesson that I taught them at, and at that lesson, they were feeling pretty great about themselves. There's a very commonly known kind of learning quirk, especially in the music world, which is that especially when you start doing something like tone development, your ear tends to get way sharper faster than your body can catch up to produce the tone that you want to hear. It does take time to train the muscles and everything. So because you have that discrepancy of your ear being up here but your physical capability is down here, you feel like you got worse, even though, to your teacher you sound better. It is actually written in Trevor Wye's tone book. He has a little paragraph in his tone development section that talks about this problem. It is actually very commonly known, but at the same time, I was kind of thinking to myself, there must be more than that. Because it's not just when they're working on tone, it even happens with things like technique, those really technical passages in their repertoire. I get a lot of students who will kind of prep me before they start playing and say, I just can't get this. My fingers just don't want to play it. I feel like my rhythm is completely off. I feel like I don't have a sense of the beats. It just doesn't sound good. They actually sound pretty depressed about their playing, and I'm just like, no, just show me how you're currently playing it and I'll help you make it better. That's my job as a teacher. This is why you hired me to be your teacher. Because I can't help them if I don't know where they currently are. Like if I can't actually hear what they're struggling with, what's my job as a teacher then, right? Like I need to actually have something that I observe about them that I can help them with. That means that they do actually have to show their faults to me so I can help correct them. They finally play it after procrastinating for like maybe another minute or so. It's maybe 80-90% to perfection. They're almost there. Like maybe there's just a little hiccup in how they're thinking of how the phrase goes. Maybe there's a little hiccup in how they're thinking of the sequence of fingerings. Really easy things to explain that kind of help them reframe how they think about that phrase. They're usually really just kind of polishing things. And I found that in the beginning of my teaching career, when I would, tell them like, that was great job, good job. Now let's talk about these things. They would look even more depressed. Like, what's going on? Like, I told them that they're good, and I am now trying to make them even better. The mistake I was making was not explicitly telling them that I am saying these extra new things, not to tell you that you're a bad flutist, but to bring you to the next level. I only recently started to say this explicitly to my students, and it seems to really help. So that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. In your head as a teacher, you're thinking, okay, cool. I know you've improved to this point now. So now I want to teach you even more advanced things to bring you to the next level. The thing is though, the student who is bringing the music to you, one, especially if they feel like they're not doing a good job, there's no way if they feel like that to ever feel like they have actually come up to the next level where they are ready to learn much more advanced things. Like they don't feel like they're here right now. They feel like they're over here. So as a teacher, you do actually have to tell them, yo, you're actually right here right now. Maybe your mentality is over here, but you're not actually a beginner anymore. You are like a very good advancing student now. You have to tell them where their level is because they don't know. The other big problem, which I don't think any of us really would think that this is a problem is that these students tend to be the same students who will go and listen to recordings of their music. I even have students who listen to recordings of their etudes. Not everyone does that. These students go and look up professional recordings of their music, and you guys know how professional recordings go. They do take after take after take. They make it pretty. They splice things together. Okay, especially if it's recorded and done in a studio, you can bet that it's been remastered somehow. Somehow they've done something to make it completely perfect. In real life, no one plays anything 100% perfectly. No one. No one is exempt from this. My students are listening to these super professional recordings that I didn't even ask them to listen to, and they're comparing themselves to that. And I think that's what's making them feel like they suck, because they don't sound like that. But what I'm telling them is, you used to play like a beginner, but now you play like a really good intermediate student. That professional recording is all the way over here, but you've already made this progress, usually in a very short amount of time. I would say on average, most of my students jump from sounding like a beginner to sounding like an intermediate student within a few months. It's insane. I mean, the types of students who would find me via YouTube are people who are go-getters. So to them, they think that they've slid back, that they are getting worse and worse and worse, when really they haven't. On top of their own ear getting sharper, they are now listening to professional grade flute playing, which is making their ears even sharper, which means that they hear even more impurities in their sound. They hear more of their rhythmic hiccups. They hear when they've lost the sense of the beat. Things that they never heard about their own playing before, they're now hearing. Back here when you were a beginner, if you don't hear all of these problems with your playing, you think life is great. You think you play great. You may not understand why your teacher is pointing out a bunch of things about your playing that they don't like, when you're like, I don't even see that as a problem. But these go-getter students that I have, they're hearing more and more and more of their problems that even I wasn't going to address until maybe a month or two later. When I start with a student, I like to kind of hear more of their background and what their goals are. Then I'll hear them actually play, and that combination gives me a really good idea of where we're starting. And I already start thinking in my head of like, okay, let's think of a game plan of what we want to do with this student. Maybe for this student, we want to grow their tone a bit more, but maybe I won't talk too much about vibrato first, or maybe I won't talk too much about double tonguing first, because I first want to get their tone really good before I start playing with vibrato, or I want to get their single tonguing really, really nice before I introduce them to double tonguing. But then these poor students will start hearing all of these professional grade recordings, and they're like, how the heck is that person tonguing so quickly? I've even had some students come to me and tell me that they cried to themselves because they were like, I am never going to be able to tongue that fast. And that's when I had to tell them, no, you will be able to tongue that fast, because that person is cheating with double tonguing. It's not real single tonguing. I count these types of situations as teaching mistakes that I learned from. I realized that nowadays, especially because there's so much information online that you can look up anything your heart desires. These go-getter students that I have, they're gonna go and look up everything on their own, which means that I can no longer do the type of teaching where I'm like, okay, I will teach you single tonguing first. I won't worry you with double tonguing and triple tonguing so I don't freak you out. And then later on, I'll introduce those ideas to you. Now I find I can't do that. I have to be like, okay, so this is single tonguing. We're gonna work on single tonguing, but I want you to know that double tonguing and triple tonguing exists. This is generally how you do it. We're not going to do it now because you have to develop your single tonguing very well first. If they listen to something with crazy tonguing, they'll now immediately know, oh, that must be double tonguing or triple tonguing. I get to learn that later. It's not like, oh my gosh, how are they tonguing that fast? I cannot do this. I will never be a real flutist. I've really found that since the internet has come so far, I've had to completely revamp my teaching. I've had to completely revamp how I expect students to come back to me, because I used to expect students to come back to me just bright-eyed and innocent, blissfully ignorant of musical concepts, and I just kind of very slowly feed the concepts to them so that they don't like freak out knowing how much knowledge they actually don't know yet. Now it's quite the opposite. Now it's these students will come to you knowing a little bit about a lot of things, but with some gaps of knowledge between it. And that's where you as a teacher in this modern day era need to teach. That's what you need to teach. You need to fill in the gaps. You need to actually ask them, how much do you know about this topic? How much do you know about harmonics? How much do you know about how key signatures work? How much do you know about how a minor scale is derived from a major scale? I've had to ask this very bluntly, and I get them to explain to me what they know first. The way that they describe how they know like music theory concepts, it makes me realize, okay, I know for a fact now that they don't know how a minor key is actually directly related to a major key. Or like, oh, now I know that they've heard of the circle of fifths, they think it's really scary, but they don't actually know how the whole thing actually works. So that's when I pull out my toy keyboard to show over FaceTime and Skype, and I show them how all that stuff works. It's just always light bulbs going off. They're like, oh my gosh, you know, I've looked up stuff about this before and it never made sense. That's what you do as a teacher now. Nowadays, it's filling in the gaps. It's telling them what is coming up next. And it's being very blunt with them that what you are telling them is to bring them to the next level of playing, not telling them that they are bad flutists. It's actually really important to write in your notes with your student what things that they should work on, because a lot of times as teachers, when your student comes back and plays something for you like really, really well, I'm gonna be really honest with you here, especially when you start to have many students, you really start to forget what problems they had. As a teacher, when you're listening to something, you're just listening for current problems. You don't necessarily actually remember old problems. Before I finish talking about a certain piece that they're working on, I will scan their notes. This happens a lot. I'll read some points of what I wrote before, and they had nailed it this time. They nailed it so hard that I didn't even remember that they had that problem. Very important, teachers. Please write down the things that you want them to work on, because chances are you're going to forget that they even had that problem. What I do then is I tell them very explicitly, wow, you did this thing that I wrote down. I don't even remember that you had that problem. Like, that's how well you did it. You X that off their list then, and then you add the new ones. And when I add the new ones, I tell them, I'm adding these new ones not to tell you that you're bad or you did a bad job. I am putting these things in here. I'm teaching you these things because you didn't know it before. You didn't know this stuff before, now you know it. And that's my job as a teacher, is to teach you these things. I'm not telling you you're bad. I'm not judging you. In fact, I'm telling you you did a really good job, and so you get to learn these new things now. Ever since I started to become very explicit about how I'm teaching them and why I'm teaching them things that I am teaching them, lessons have gotten so much better. They understand what I'm doing as a teacher, and I understand their feelings as a student. It keeps the communication very open, and it makes the environment very safe. Now your students know that you really do care about them and you really are bringing them to more and more advanced levels. And so they feel safe showing you their faults. They feel safe telling you their gaps in knowledge. They feel safe playing badly for you because they know that you will make them better. Let me know if you are a teacher, if you have similar experiences. Please put it in the comment section below. I would love to read about them. As usual, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. My last video is over there. And if you want to catch me during the week, my social media networks are down there. But otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Bye. I just feel like teaching has to be completely revamped now because of the way the internet works. The weird thing for me is that I know that I have a direct involvement in being on the internet. I am one of the things that my students found on the internet about flute playing, and that is why they became my students. I'm one of the reasons why I had to revamp my own way of teaching. It's a very strange feeling.